Hello, and welcome to this, the Savage Balance Podcast. Hello everyone, how you doing? Welcome to this, episode number 13 of the Savage Balance Podcast. How you all doing? Hope you're all doing well. I felt like my voice took on an extra level of potential annoyance for somebody. There was a whole kind of different vibe like this going on. How are you all doing? I hope you're all well. Apologies to anyone who is... Actually, no, not apologies. That was just my voice. Kind of trying to be professional, but also getting excited. What a way to start the podcast, Ben. Thank you very much. Hope that has filled your boots and socks with glorious introductory podcast vibes. Maybe shall I just go back to the script? Yeah, let's stick to the script. This is episode number 13. This is an interview with Dann Alexander. So this is an interview about minimalism. If you are skeptical or maybe have negative preconceptions about minimalism, perhaps you've seen those kind of almost, I don't know what you'd say, like almost cult-like videos on YouTube. I don't know if you've seen the ones you think, oh, I should tidy away a bit of my stuff. Let's type in minimalism. And there's a lot of people in white and very bright rooms, and everything is very clean and peculiar and placed, and it feels a bit weird to me, those things. I would describe myself as a minimalist, trying to adopt those values, but they look a bit culty to me. I think what they look like to me is they give this look of kind of perfectionism that can be a bit daunting and is, for me, the ripe kind of environment for failure. In fact, American Psycho, they almost look like Paul Allen's apartment, as in Christian Bale's apartment in American Psycho. And we all know what he was like, weren't he? Not that great. Anyway, if you have that sort of preconception about minimalism, I would kind of softly suggest just don't leave right now. Stick with it for a bit. I think this is a good introductory conversation. It veers off onto other subjects, but it gives a good overview with a really lovely person saying some really lovely things in Dann Alexander. For those people who don't know Dann Alexander, Dan is a writer based in Canada. He was a contributing editor for Minimalist.Life and has written 2 books, one of them planned UnParenthood, Creating a Life Without Procreating, which is all about his decision to not have children, as well as other issues relating to parenting and parents, as well as Let Nothing Go to Waste, which is a collection of his non-fiction writing, which serves as a reminder that we all have stories to tell and we should never let any of them go to waste. He has written countless blog posts on many different platforms, including his own website, on a massive range of subjects that he's very passionate about. And in fact, this interview actually started off when the producer for the show that I work on, the vegan radio show I work on, found an article he wrote exploring the links between minimalism and veganism. So again, we discuss minimalism, but we also discuss the way it relates to the coronavirus pandemic and links with, as I mentioned before, veganism. There's been a few interviews on here. In fact, I think that the only interviews have come from particular interviews I really enjoyed from that show. So again, it has a vegan tint to it, which I think is really interesting in itself. But again, if you're thinking, well, I don't want to listen to anything too vegan heavy, it sort of dips in and out. And again, this is a lot about veganism, and it might intrigue you in different ways. So I'd say give it a go, give it a listen. You're here. You've already gone this far through all of this waffly nonsense. Nonsense. I've said that again. I think there was a previous podcast in which I said nonsense. I think I started going nonsense because I'm trying to keep that professional edge. Anyway, this was recorded the 9th of July 2020. So I believe we were coming out of lockdown. In fact, we were already out of lockdown, and we were just starting to, in the UK at least, just starting to reopen various shops and such like that. For a bit of context as to when this was recorded. I will say this isn't the best quality in terms of the audio quality. The conversation was wonderful, but the actual recording is a bit crackly in places, and on certain syllables that he says there's a kind of a push. So it's not the best quality it could be. I did what I could, but I couldn't get it exact. But it's very listenable and it's really enjoyable. And Dan is a really wonderful person to talk to. He's really full of life. He's really interesting. He keeps things quite understandable and relatable. And yeah, really enjoyed my time with him. And I think you will too. So without any more, well, I guess my new phrase is waffly nonsense. Here it is. This is episode number 13, a chat about minimalism with Dan Alexander. So I'm joined today by Dan Alexander. How are you today?
Hey Ben, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing well. This potentially wasn't going to happen today as you had a power outage down your end, but I'm grateful to see that we can have this chat today.
Well, I'm grateful. Been looking forward to it.
Me too. So for those people who maybe aren't aware, could you give us a definition of minimalism?
Minimalism, I think, is, interpretive to depending on everybody's individual experience. But I would say it's living more with less. So it's not, a lot of people, I guess, would associate it with downsizing your life and looking for maybe simpler ways to live, perhaps. That's sort of my broad definition of it. But everybody that I know who has embraced it takes it to whatever, to their own comfort level, and maybe they make it more about downsizing and not having as many personal possessions, but expanding it to their health and how they eat, perhaps, and how they go about living life by having experiences versus owning material possessions.
Yes, it goes beyond just the physical things you have in your life and is more of a philosophy beyond that.
Right.
Yeah, encompasses extra things. Yeah, I like that. That makes sense. So what roles does it play in your life in particular, in whether it's through routines or specific possessions or
like that? For my life in particular, in our life, my spouse's life, when we started looking into more of it, to embracing it, it was about, well, we don't need all the stuff we have, and we don't need to live in a giant house with all kinds of space we don't need to use. And that was we had started this journey years ago, and that we lived in a big house and had wanted to downsize, own less things, and not have to do so much in the way of maintenance for maintaining a big home, for instance. So in March of this year, we actually downsized and moved into a one-bedroom condo where we live now.
Great, that's great. And is it working out well for you there? Is it?
So far, we moved in right just before everything went into lockdown, like literally 2 weeks before everything went into lockdown, and we were able to get everything in. And then it was 2 weeks later that things shut down here, and we were just relieved not to have to be rushing to do things that others had to rush to get done, or some people had to put moves on hold or adapt. But so far it's been working out great. We actually have still, as recently as last weekend, managed to downsize even more things that we had.
That's great. We me and my partner had a similar thing of just moving just before the lockdown here in the UK. Have you found that there's any links between time with you before in your lockdown where you are and minimalism? Did you find that it made anything in particular easier or more focused? I mean, is a lot of your work done from home anyway? So was there much of a change in lifestyle for you?
The change I do have a day job, as the adage goes, real artists and artists need to have a day job. I'm really fortunate that I was able to switch to work on my day job from home. But as far as my writing career, freelance career, I've still been able to work early mornings before I would start the day job and take care of some stuff later in the evenings outside of my day job working hours. And with the lockdown and the change in our lives, I've actually been able to draw greater focus to my work and my artistic and writing work because I'm surrounded by it. It's there. So, instead of staring off into space, which I rarely do as it is, always on the go, then I can pick something up and work on it and work on content or grab a notebook and start scratching some things out and appreciate what we have versus worrying about what we want.
Yes, that's a big part of it, and especially in the kind of systems we are brought up in and live within, that is the impulse that is usually preyed upon and sort of exploited and exposed to always continually want and need more.
Exactly. People have been spending time. They've been getting bored during lockdown, so they've been increasing their shopping carts on Amazon and ordering more stuff coming to the door. I've seen postal vans exploding at the seams, the Amazon packages, and I just shake my head. Like, I get that some stuff is stuff that people probably actually need, but I've seen through social media, like, wow, did you really need that now?
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. When we started coming out of lockdown and some of the shops were allowed to be open, one of the biggest in the area that I live in was Primark, a cheap clothes shop, and people were queuing out there quite incessantly, and it seemed to me like not all of those people standing there would need to be standing there for practical reasons. There's another impulse there that they've been missing out on and craving. Or maybe in the opposite way, there's a something that they've been struggling with for a long time, and they're trying to refill that gap with something they haven't been able to fill it with for a long time.
Right. I agree.
Yeah, which is one reason why I get a lot out of trying to continue having a sort of minimalist philosophy and mindset personally. But people I've talked to about it tend to react sometimes with a bit of resistance or a bit hesitant points. What do you find are the common misconceptions of minimalism?
I think one of the misconceptions, and I agree with you, I think people, some of it is insecurity and fear. People are afraid of taking certain steps they fear that maybe it's going to mean a reduction in their overall quality of life. And so there's that fear. But I'm sorry, I kind of diverged from your question.
That's okay. Don't go on any tangent you want.
It's, I think people fear that they're going to have to give up something, and it's just not necessarily that at all. It's about reduction of things, so you can focus on more things that you enjoy, and by doing so, you end up. Some people, I know for me especially, I've found I've had more time for things I actually enjoy doing, and it's like, well, okay, I don't have back to the house, and I don't have this large property to maintain anymore, and I've got more time to go through. Okay, I can pick up a book and read through it, or work on something, and exercise, just live.
Yeah, investing back in your time, which is a precious commodity that a lot of the times we don't see that way. It's just
exactly. The world seems to be, let's face it, it's a bit of a crazy place right now, even pre-pandemic, where there's just so much toxicity circulating through, events that are happening. And this is 2020 is proving to be a catalyst for change, and hopefully that change will be for the better. But people have started. I hope more people have started to look at what they have versus what they want, and they use the events of the pandemic and everything as a launching pad for change.
Yes, what function these things have in their life, how much of them are distractions, how much of them are useful, because I certainly found that the more that I go through things, the more I realize that there are things where I've lost the function of what they were initially. They sit there with a purpose that was intended, and because of other things, they just...
Right, exactly. It was last weekend or the weekend before, I can't remember. We loaded up the bookshelf that we have with the books that we decided to keep. And I'll use that as an example. It was so amazing to look at each individual book and go, I'm keeping this for that reason. I'm going to part with it and donate it. And we donated in this course of our moving. We've donated several carloads of stuff to the local animal shelter thrift store, which has a great turnover as far as they're able to get stuff out and raise some money for the animal shelter, the Nova Scotia SPCA here. And a couple of days ago, I picked out another, okay, wait a minute, I don't think I want that book after all. But we've got on our shelf books that mean something to us, and we're hanging on to for whatever reason. If there's some books that I have that I'm reading through right now, eventually I'm going to donate them to the local library system, maybe. But first priority is to give that stuff to the animal shelter so they can continue to raise money.
Yes, that's another good point, really, that the more stuff that we have in our possession, the more actually we can give it back out to people who would need it a lot more than us, or have a lot more function for it that would fit into their version of a minimalist lifestyle. They might get a lot from those things that we might necessarily not.
Right, and people need to move away from the assumption that, okay, you're just getting rid of your own junk and putting it onto somebody else's. That's not it. You don't need to look at it as junk. You look at it as things that you don't have a purpose for anymore, but somebody else out there will have a purpose for it. And
absolutely,
and so that way there's less stuff ending up in landfills ideally, and somebody out there looks at something in the thrift store, a book again that. As an example, if they say, hey, I've got a purpose for that. That looks interesting. Or I know somebody who might have a purpose for that. They pay a couple of dollars for it, and it ends up being used again. And hopefully, ideally, the process continues.
Yes, a continuous, never-ending, unbroken chain would be the ideal.
Right, exactly.
What do you find is the best methods for communicating about this? Because I personally find it very hard, especially when it rubs up against someone else's sort of maybe unconscious but consumerist viewpoint, where buying holds a high place in our society, or it can be a gesture of love or of kindness as well. Do you have any tips for how to, or any methods yourself that you find is good for communicating the reasons and the reasoning behind this philosophy?
I've often pointed people to online content, and through Minimalism.Life, especially, where I was a contributing editor for some time, and recently returned with another article. And to be honest, this morning I don't remember what the other article was that I submitted. It had to do with downsizing from the house to the condo. But I will point people to content, for instance, through Minimalism.Life, or content from the minimalists, Josh Fields Milburn and Ryan Nicodemus, who've been, I think, instrumental in helping to bring more of the minimalist movement to light. Although it's certainly been out there, prior to their excellent work that they've done. I will point people to those articles. Josh and Ryan, in particular, have very eloquent ways of writing to get people to listen, and through their podcast as well, where people would ask questions. How people are asking the questions that you're asking. For me, it's been living through the experiences of minimalism and continuing to learn from them. Like, ideally, minimalism is not something you learn and, okay, I know I've got this. It's a continual process of learning. And as I've learned more, and as my wife has learned more, I think we've learned to try to communicate better. And that's through not just writing content, and I love writing about the subject as well, but we participate in a local minimalist meetup group, which we just got involved again through Zoom, virtual, and sharing those experiences with some new people and people we've known for years now. And we all learn from each other, whether it's within the local groups or seeing everybody else's experiences out there. That's one of the reasons I love Minimalism.Life in particular, is it's very in-depth and very deep personal experiences people have shared.
Yes, there's a lot of lovely, great content on there. In fact, they were the first people that brought this to my attention. And you're saying as well about being a contributing editor. One of the pieces that brought our attention together was the piece that you wrote about minimalism and veganism together, and the links between the two. And I got a lot. I got a lot initially when I first went vegan. After a while, it started opening me up to other thoughts and philosophies out there, like feminism and minimalism, and their podcast was a big thing for me back when I was initially learning about it. What do you find are the links between minimalism and veganism? Because maybe a lot of people initially hearing this will think, well, they're two separate things. I can't see how they sync up.
Right. I appreciate the response. The responses I've had just from that article I contributed about minimalism and veganism have been extraordinary, and it's an inspiring article, and I'm really quite proud of it. You can look at them as two separate things, but they go hand in hand together, in the sense that, well, I don't need to eat all of these things across the board, especially things that I know are not healthy. And I think minimalism and eating a plant-based diet are a perfect marriage of, you're doing more by you're living more by doing less, going back to a whole food diet, and learning to, eating better requires an investment of time. So we all have those days where we just want to throw something in the microwave or in the oven and be done with it. But as you move to doing more with prepping food, you end up in the end doing less, in the sense that you're doing less shopping for meats, of course, and I'm happy, not be eating any animal products as it is. You're shopping specifically for plant-based items, and you're going back to, I would say you're going back to a diet that is in a lot of ways simpler, because you're dealing with whole foods and you're finding creative ways to incorporate those whole foods into your everyday living. But you don't also have to be fancy with your cooking. You can cut up potatoes and put them in the oven and roast them with a few spices. Have them over greens, something. It seems so basic, but you can make those into wonderful meals. And we do that every single week here. My spouse is an amazing cook, and I get inspired by what she does in the kitchen, and we often work together on food prep, and we both become better for it. And I've taken minimalism and has put real joy back into something simple as eating, because again, you're in our view, you're doing more, but you have less. You don't need to have as much stuff around in your cupboards and in your fridge and so on. And we ended up surprised. I'm sure you and others have had the same experience. We ended up actually having way less in our grocery bills because of going to this kind of eating.
Yes, that's I definitely share that experience, especially when certain cost comparisons between certain things and other things, and just it's a lot of, I think I've said it a few times now, but it's a lot of vegan food out there is kind of seen as, or would have at one point been seen as, peasant food, like known for they're the cheapest foods to fill you up and keep you alive and as healthy as possible in those situations. So yeah, I definitely recognize that as well.
Right. I mean, let's face it, some of the processed vegan food, the burgers, like Beyond Burger as an example, and others, they're all good to have once in a while. I'm grateful that we're seeing more of these foods emerge, but we spend actually more time eating whole food stuff and prepping stuff from those whole foods and not buying as much processed stuff. It's great to have. So the cheese, some of the vegan cheeses are absolutely phenomenal now. It started out with just, here you could only get Daiya for so long, and now there's, product from all over the world that is brought in and actually being sold in major major supermarket retailers here. And I see that happening overseas in the UK where you're at as well.
It's a very big, fast and sudden boom, which is fantastic. Yeah, and I am too very grateful for those products being available and accessible, and they're very enjoyable as well. There is a slight part of me that is not necessarily, well, no, I won't phrase it that way, but there's a part of me that feels like a lot of veganism is tied up with consumerism, a lot of food and clothes and soap and body care, and a lot of, I hear a lot of people say, you vote with your wallet, that the money you put is important part of your vegan lifestyle, or being part of the vegan philosophy, which is very true. And there's part of me that feels a bit uncomfortable with the viewpoint of validating veganism first and foremost through an economic lens, that people are seeing it's more valid now because it's worth something money wise. What are your views on that, and how can we still be effective vegans beyond sort of the monetary value that is placed upon it?
I think it's important for us as vegans to continue to press for the changes that have been happening. What we are seeing with the increase in plant milk production is a result of demand. There's a dairy production company here, and I'm sure you and I share the same thoughts on the dairy industry, but one of the major players here actually is now investing significant resources into their production facilities. One of them, which is about not even an hour's drive from where I live, they're investing into plant-based beverages because they realize they've lost such a significant part of the market, and they know that because people have voted with their wallets, they're moving into that area. It also expands into clothing and fashion accessories. One of the companies I love, I own one of their belts and I have one of their wallets, and I've written content for them, if I can mention them, is Truth Belts. They've been around out of Toronto, Ontario area. They've been around since 2001, and they're producing very strong, like, belt that I have, for instance, is completely, like, I'll have it, provided I stay the same size. I could have this for the rest of my life. We're seeing, so people are buying less leather, they're like, I don't want to have that anymore. So they're slowly moving away from products that are made from animals. It's like the ethical vegans, which I respect their point of view, and they're getting rid of a lot of their stuff. I know I'm not quite there yet, but there's probably some stuff around in the fashion stuff that I have around that has some leather in it, but we're moving away from it. And that's how people vote with their wallets, is you create that demand to your favorite fashion retailer or brand. You say, you know what, I'm not going to be giving you my business anymore because you're using animal products in your stuff. Look at Canada Goose. I don't have anything kind to say about Canada Goose, but I'm not 100% up to speed on the story. Supposedly, they're looking to move away from using animal products in some of their jackets because they've faced so many protests as a result of products they've produced. So if people continue to vote with their wallets and say, look, this isn't right, there's an ethical issue here, and an environment, not just with animal treatment, but with the environment and the overall world as a whole. So we keep voting with our wallets and we keep creating that demand. Look at what's been accomplished just in the last 5 years. Imagine what it's going to look like in 5 more years, in 10 years.
Yes, especially if it was at this rate, that would be wonderful. Yeah, you make some very interesting points there. Did minimalism come first for you, or did veganism, or did they both sort of go hand in hand together with you?
They ultimately came hand in hand, but I look back to the journey. I think minimalism was, I discovered and kind of awoke to minimalism first, but I'm not 100% certain of that. Now, veganism, I've been vegan since 3 years this September, and I was certainly going through a minimalism journey at the time, and discovered pretty quickly how they could go hand in hand, and how living, both adopting both ways of life could benefit us tremendously.
Absolutely, yes. And you mentioned before previously about prepping meals and about the impact sort of on the wallet as well. Do you have any advice or tips on how people can treat their veganism more minimally?
Prepping meals ahead of time, like we touched on, that investment in time actually is significant. And an example I could give is, one of my favorite things to make is the tomato soup. I make a big pot of it, at home. Our own vegetable broth, a can of tomatoes from Costco, Roma tomatoes from Costco, and then our own vegetable broth, and then our own ingredients. Cook a pot of that. Spend a couple hours prepping that. It's so easy. Something like that is easy. Then the time you're investing in having 2 lunch weeks worth of soup, you're going to get that time back, and you're not spending money buying food out all the time. You're having healthy, whole food that you've prepared at home. And, doing those cook-aheads, you invest a couple hours in them, you get that back, in multiple hours afterwards from having that time. So you might, have to invest some time, but you ultimately get more time back, in my view.
Yes, that's the thing that does keep coming up, is that sort of time management and where and when and how to focus it. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A moment of focused energy on making a lot of food for at some point, and it saves you those moments throughout the week or the 2 weeks that come up when maybe you're in a flow, you're doing something, if it's creative or it's less creative, more practical, whatever it is, and you don't have to step out of that so much. You've got that food already there.
Right, and I found that even if you spend a Sunday or a Saturday afternoon doing prep, even if it's like prep for the entire week, not just lunches but suppers, even, because maybe you're having a busy week coming up, or you want to make things easier. I found that you realize the enjoyment again of something simplistic as prepping food in order for you to survive. And so you get that, it just brings a feeling of joy back. If you can invest that time in learning to prep food and do it with whole foods, and so you're not using animal products, and you're doing something that's healthy, and you're, for your physical and mental well-being.
Yes, yeah, bringing that joy back. I like that phrase. I really recommend people take a look at the article itself. I certainly got a lot of things from it. The idea of veganism being a freeing action, the way that links with minimalism, that it's all about trying to free things up and living a life of simplicity. I do feel this is a personal thing and maybe a bit of a tangent, but there's a lot of drive towards convenience things, convenience foods, convenient tools. Oh, this tool will make this easier. But I feel like it is a life of simplicity, that the convenience is actually trying to figure out a way of cramming more into a day. And then there's so much life admin that comes with trying to balance up all of these things that should be so convenient, but now there's so much of them. The idea of a life of simplicity is more space away from those things and more time. So I really liked the link between those two in there.
Thank you. I looked at this from a very personal perspective, and even after coming up with how I'm linking these two things together, it all made sense to me. It was just, I pretty much sat down and wrote this article in one shot, like wrote it straight through, and then it was like at the end of it, looking at, wow, okay, look at how far, not just how I've come and how far my spouse has come. Look at how far the world has come. And it's an interesting time. It's difficult and it's a bit toxic out there right now. But this minimalism and veganism can and have been catalysts for positive change across the globe.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Whereabouts can people find the find the article?
They can go on to It's Minimalism.Life, and then /journal. If they look up minimalism and veganism and then my name, that article actually comes up right at the top of Google.
That's fantastic. And for those people listening, Dann Alexander, that has 2 N's in it. DANN, just in case people are looking for it. Where else can people find other bits of your work?
It's just even searching my name. I've been lucky. I've been fortunate in my career to be published on several websites. I've ghostwritten a lot of content for clients as well, but they can find me online at dannalexander.com. I do keep a blog there where I post fairly regularly on Mondays, most Mondays, and on Twitter at Writer Dan, so the word so writer and DANN. That's the only social media I use. I'm very, very anti-Facebook, Instagram, and I share my own thoughts, and my jokes are sometimes funny. And I've written a couple of books, got another one. Hopefully it'll be out by the end of this year or next year. And yeah, I'm happy to welcome any readers.
Cool. What are they called?
I'm sorry, you cut out there.
Oh, what are they called? The one that's out at the moment and the one that's on its way.
The new book that's coming out. Sorry, you broke up there. That book is called "Let Nothing Go to Waste," and that is going to be it's a collection of short stories, nonfiction, based on stuff I've compiled over the years, and it's just interesting stuff. And I do touch on animal rights in it, but also sharing. It's mostly about sharing personal stories about growing up in small town Nova Scotia and the interesting life I've led so far.
That's fantastic. I really appreciated we talked about time management. You've given me your time for us to have this chat. I feel like I've learned a lot, and it's lovely to hear someone linking these two things together, because I do feel like I feel like they go so well hand in hand, and it's lovely to see someone write and talk so eloquently about them and sort of pass these ideas on in very understandable, easy to digest ways. So thank you for your writing, and thank you very much for your time today.
Oh, thank you, Ben. It's a pleasure, and I wish you guys and your program continued success. You have a great station there too, and I've been listening, and I want to say hi and thanks to everybody in the Norwich area for listening, and for all over the world for tuning in.
Perfect. That is great. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you.
And there we are. That was my conversation with Dann Alexander. I hope you will agree that it was wonderful. He had a lot of great insight and kept things very understandable and relatable. And I really just enjoyed my time with him, and I could easily have another conversation with him again. It was really wonderful. I hope that people maybe who had a kind of negative preconception have at least broadened their horizon or managed to open up their fixed opinion on it to a bit of what's the phrase I'm looking for? To challenge that preconception they had, and hopefully got something, at least a new perspective on it, potentially even interested in it. Why not? I hope so anyway. There is a link to that article that we discussed in the conversation about minimalism and veganism, plus many other things in the show notes below, so go and have a look. What have we got down there? There's a link to his website and his Twitter, and the Minimalist.Life website that he was a contributing editor on. Also, one of my first introductions to minimalism was probably the same for a lot of people, which was The Minimalists. I started listening to their podcast when they first started it, actually, back about 4-5, I think it was about 5 years ago or so, and I dip in and out every now and again, but they were a big inspiration for me. There's also a link to their film that they made, which is on Netflix, called The Minimalists' Less Is Now. There's also a few links to his books that we mentioned about before. Go check out, go root through the old the show notes. Some good stuff there. So, as I just mentioned there, and during the conversation, he said, "Let Nothing Go to Waste." That's coming out soon. As I said, it was recorded in July. If it interests you, it's out now. There is a link below to go and find it. And there's also the planned UnParenthood as well in the link below through Hive. Hive is a very good, if you haven't heard of Hive, Hive is essentially like a kind of Amazon-esque thing, but you can also, when you get to the checkout, donate money to your local bookshop and stuff like that. So it has a kind of positive edge to it, especially during these coronavirus pandemic times. Very good to be able to support your local bookshop. In fact, the local bookshop to me, recently I saw a shop to let sign outside of it, and I'm gutted because it was genuinely such a good. It was an Amnesty bookshop, so they were all secondhand, and they had some wonderful other stuff in there as well. But the book selection in there was just high quality, and it's closing down, which is a shame. So it's a very important to support everything as and where you can. And there's an opportunity to throw a little bit of pence, a little bit of pounds their way through a purchase. So check them out. Once again, thank you very much to Dann Alexander. Really, it was really wonderful to spend time with him, and he's a really genuine human being, and I really like his work. And as I say, there's a link to his website, and there's loads of other blog stuff on there. Do check him out. Do check it out on there. Thanks very much for listening, everyone. If you could share this podcast, I would be so grateful. I really would like to. It's quite hard to promote this podcast because it's not really. I think a lot of podcasts, when they start off about a specific subject, and therefore you can work your way through into that community and you can get it out there. And this podcast is, as you will tell if you even just scroll through the episode names, it's about all kinds of things. There's creative writing, there's politics, there's serious stuff, there's fun stuff, there's veganism, there's environment, there's just countless different subjects. So it's quite hard to place it in somewhere. Really, it's just a place to explore different ideas and different themes. And there's going to be different subjects coming up as well, talking about I've forgotten what the word is. Body stuff, body things. We'll chat about body things. We'll chat about. You know what would be good is if you prepare a list beforehand where you can talk about the potential subjects you're going to be talking about. Instead of just winging it and going, fuck it, it's probably about this shit, innit? It's about body things. I would like to do some stuff about economics. It's something I have a big open spot of knowledge in. I don't know enough about it. So I'd like to explore that more and learn some more stuff. So if you email me at savbalpod@gmail.com, if you know any people who are good people to chat about in terms of economics, who have either a good stance and a good point of view, or make preferably someone who can simplify it down and make it easy for people to digest, I would genuinely really love to talk to them. I find it so hard and I get confused, so that would be wonderful if you could find someone like that. If you have any other guests you'd like to recommend, if you want to talk about different subjects or topics that you would like to hear about, or have critiques about the subjects I have talked about, genuinely, I would so massively appreciate it if I got your input about what's interesting and what's not. That would be wonderful. I'm waffling on, aren't I? A bit. Share this podcast with your friends. Social medias we have an Instagram, Savage Balance Podcast, and a Twitter at SavBalPod. There's a website, savbalpod.com. There is stuff on there, but it's not been updated for a while. I've got into bad habits. I need to update it. So check it out if you want. There's still some good stuff on there, but nothing new for a little while. A subscribe would fill my heart with joy. A comment would fill my heart with love. A rate would fill my heart with juice. Not as important, is it? And a review would fill my heart with angst. Because I will go, I've got a review. Is it going to be any good? Is it not? And then, if it's 5 stars, that's great. The artwork is by Dolly Gray, and there's more Instagram stuff coming from them. And it's great. I'm so appreciative that I have this person in my life who can create this stuff. It's wonderful. And the music is by Danny Tonks. I'd like to point you in the direction of some of the stuff they're doing more. So I will make an effort to do that more, because you should check it out. Thanks very much, guys, for everything you've done. I need to go and check on my boiling potatoes, because I don't want them to get fucked up. And also the sausages and the vegetable fingers that are in there, and the peas. as this is the dinner that will be eaten by me and my partner tonight. So, me and my partner tonight, eating sausage and mash and peas. You know when you get to that point where you think, I wish I hadn't have done that, but I'm too deep into this. I've recorded everything now and I'm not going to bother editing it out. So you just have to live with that regret and let it fester inside you and eat you up and ruin your life from the inside slowly, one small, guilt-ridden morsel at a time. See you later. Have a good week. Love you. Bye. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to other people. Why don't you? And kind to yourself. See you later, guys. Take it easy. So long for now.